come to, a carotid artery or putting so-called a sleeper on somebody. And then the other thing that they're looking at is, when a person calls the police on a black person, what they would do is they wanted to see if they could put together some type of legislation on that, a policy of police reform on that. And I wanted to know if you would support, and I think those are crumbs on the table. But my question would be to both of you is that would you go far enough and say that, hey, not only just take those crumbs on the table, but also have a penalty with that in terms of like jail time or whatever when you do something like that, call the police on somebody and do that type of thing, because that could set up a person, the police could come and that person could get killed because, of this disparities in treating with the police. So I wanted to know from you, I hope I'm being very clear with you, that would you support having prison time for those people that automatically would use a chokehold and that would kill somebody, and that somebody would call the police on them wrongfully?
Okay. Thank you, brother. I appreciate your call. So, John, basically he's asking, would you be in favor? Okay. Now, I have a second part of that question. Go ahead and answer it.
Okay, so let's take it in its two pieces, right? Because we're talking about national standards on, holds and use of force. And then we're also talking about accountability. And by the way, also, I do want to join Dr. B. I want to join Dr. B. Rashad in congratulating you on being appointed to Mayor Bottom's panel on police reform. You're highly qualified for that, and I look forward to seeing what you're going to do there. And to answer the question, the first part is about holds and so on. And the answer is yes, we need national standards. And this, Rashad, I have been campaigning on and calling for and making the commitment to write and champion a new Civil Rights Act as Georgia's United States Senator, a new Civil Rights Act. And one of the things that the new Civil Rights Act must do is establish national policing standards that uphold the civil and human and constitutional rights of every single citizen and empower the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division to hold law enforcement at every level and in any jurisdiction accountable to those standards. And those standards must crack down on brutality and on the unreasonable and unlawful and abusive use of violence and use of force, which is a huge problem across this country, and we got to be able to talk about it.
Now, if it's federalized, John, would it then be illegal if someone violates the federal policy? Could then the federal government actually enforce an arrest and prosecution of the cop that abuses the federal mandate?
Yeah, there's two ways you could do it, right? You can talk about the federal statute having jurisdiction over an individual officer who violates those laws. Okay. You also talk about the federal statute holding a local force or a local jurisdiction accountable to change its practices to be compliant with federal law. And I think that those are both worthy of consideration. But the bottom line is you've got to have national standards. You have to have national standards for the use of force. And yeah, you've got to be able to hold individual officers and entire departments accountable. And there also has to be funding for those departments on the line. And I think that the second point is about accountability. And this is where we have such a problem. This is where we have such a problem at every level, is that a lot of officers who abuse those whom they're detaining or arresting or investigating or, just ordinary citizens with no cause, they get kicked into some administrative procedure. They're moved laterally from one department to another. There are cozy relationships between the department and prosecutors, so there's never accountability. And that has to stop, because until law enforcement faces the same kind of penalties that ordinary people do for assault and for brutality, then we're not going to see the kind of cultural shift that we need to see in law enforcement across the country. So the bottom line, to answer Dr. B's question, is yes, federal standards, and yes, accountability, both for individual officers and for entire departments and local government.
Let me ask you this